Malaria is a tropical disease, right? Actually, malaria parasites can be found as far north as Alaska, at least in birds. And a warming climate may push avian malaria even farther north by the end of the century, according to a study in the journal PLOS One. Researchers took blood from nearly 700 birds around Anchorage, Fairbanks, and a truck stop called Cold Foot, Alaska, above the Arctic Circle at 67 degrees north latitude. And they found the parasite in 7% of the birds at the two southerly sites. Some were migrants and may have picked up the disease down south. But others were hatchlings and resident birds, indicating the parasite can complete its full life cycle in the Great White North. The parasite doesn't seem to have hopped north of Fairbanks yet. But temperatures in the Arctic are rising at twice the global average, and researchers say malaria could cross into the Arctic Circle by 2080. Once it gets there, it could attack species like snowy owls, which have never been exposed to malaria, and may not have resistance to the disease. Talk about a buzzkill. Black holes are common. But actually counting them is no easy task. Even the brightest can be hard to see. Of course, bright black holes is a bit of an oxymoron. But when supermassive black holes at the center of a galaxy feed, the material falling into them heats up, giving off a bright glow across the electromagnetic spectrum. Infrared light, in particular, is good to look for when black hole hunting. Some feasting black holes are obscured by gas and dust, which absorbs much of their glow, but they still shine in the infrared. It's no surprise, then, that NASA's infrared WISE spacecraft found a bunch. WISE launched in 2009 to survey the entire sky in the infrared. Now researchers have used WISE data to count the luminous black holes in a well-known corner of the sky called the Cosmos Field. In just that tiny region, WISE found about 130 glowing black holes or active galactic nuclei. The study will appear in the Astrophysical Journal. Extrapolating from this small area, at least 2 million active black holes dot the sky, confirming that these extreme astrophysical objects are common indeed. How many rolls, cookies, or baby carrots would you have to eat to feel full? It's probably more than you'd want to admit. It may not even be possible with carrots. But what if you ate that volume of filet mignon? Hunger and fullness are controlled by hormones that send messages between your gut and your head. And different foods send different messages. Some say eat more and others warn you to slow down. Now a study finds that protein is, indeed, key in generating signals of fullness. The work is in the journal Cell. Mice that lack receptors to sense that they were eating protein kept chowing down without appearing to feel full. Whereas normal mice would stop eating much sooner while eating a high-protein meal. The results of the study make it extra impressive that Joey Chestnut wolfed down 68 hot dogs at the Nathan's July 4th hot dog eating contest with more time he likely would have felt full after a few. But for people eating sensibly, grilled chicken or fish supply satiating protein too. Immanuel Kant spoke often about the sublime, and specifically how art becomes more sublime when beauty mixes with terror. Now research provides some support for this philosophical viewpoint. Scientists had 85 subjects experience one of 5 different things. One group watched a brief scary movie, another group watched a happy movie, and 2 other groups performed either 30 or 15 jumping jacks. The control group did nothing. Then all the subjects looked at 4 abstract paintings, for 30 seconds each, by a Russian artist, L. Lisitsky. And they rated the art based on qualities of how inspiring, stimulating, rousing, boring, forgetful, or uninteresting the piece was for them. The group that watched the scary movie rated the art as more sublime and positive than any other of the groups. In fact, the other 4 groups did not significantly differ in their ratings. We might not think of describing art as frightening. The researchers note, however, that art can be surprising, elicit goosebumps, and inspire awe. Who knew that pairing The Walking Dead with a trip to the Museum of Modern Art would make the entire experience more sublime? If you're thinking about upgrading to Apple's new iPhone 5 when it debuts in a few weeks, you're going to have to figure out what to do with your current device. Given how much we've come to rely on these gadgets for storing pictures, contacts, and personal information, some serious privacy issues should be considered before selling, recycling, or trading in your old phone. Typically, you restore factory settings on your smartphone before parting ways. But a couple of recent articles on news.com and yahoo.com find that factory resets are inconsistent, depending on the phone. BlackBerry and Apple Reset appeared to delete and scrub personal data the best, according to data retrieval experiments described in the articles. But Android and Microsoft smartphones weren't as good at wiping important information. In the Yahoo article, computer analyst Steve Burgess recommends that, in addition to the factory reset, you should remove a phone's memory and SIM cards before turning it in. Robert Siciliano's advice in the NBC News.com's story was a bit more severe. He recommends a drill, a sledgehammer, and bucket of salt water. Touchdown confirmed. We are safe on Mars, the control room at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory late in the evening of August 5, Pacific Time, when word arrived that the Curiosity rover had landed safely on Mars. The 1-ton rover, which dwarfs all Mars landers that came before it, will now spend a planned 2 years exploring the Martian surface. The mission is expected to cost $2.5 billion. Curiosity's task is to investigate the inside of Gale Crater, where a giant mound of sedimentary deposit may provide evidence of a wetter, possibly habitable Mars billions of years ago. But first, it had to survive an elaborate landing sequence, which appears to have gone smoothly. Curiosity landed on time and on target and soon beamed back grainy photos of its wheels and its shadow. Given the car-like size of the rover and the challenges of landing on Mars, Curiosity's landing goes down as one of the greatest parking jobs in history. With more and more car accidents attributed to distracted driving, it's become clear just how dangerous it can be to fiddle with your cell phone while behind the wheel. Now it seems more and more people are failing to safely use their mobile gadgets while walking. The number of distracted walkers injured seriously enough to be treated at hospital emergency rooms have more than quadrupled in the past 7 years, according to the Associated Press. That's not even counting the untold incidents of stubbing your toe or doing that little trip-run move across the sidewalk. These hospital cases are people who get hit by cars, fall off curbs, or even onto train tracks because they're too busy texting, surfing the web, or in some other way too distracted to watch where they're going. There were about 1,150 such incidents last year. There isn't any hard evidence yet that proves pedestrian gadget distraction increases the chances of pedestrian mishaps. Still, it's hard to argue with the anecdotal evidence available at the nearest street corner. Perhaps you've seen the video of the walker in California who's concentrating so hard on his mobile device that he almost bumps into a bear. Don't be that guy. Meetings, calls, kids, dogs, errands, exercise, and all those emails. Who doesn't feel starved for time these days? But a new study suggests that you can feel like you have more time by donating some to others. The research is in the journal Psychological Science. There really are only 24 hours in a day, 7 or 8 of which are, ideally, spent sleeping. And a time commitment does take time. But researchers found that if people felt like they had done something for others, their perception was that they had gotten more done than people who killed time, spent time on themselves, or got the unexpected free time. And that made them feel like they had more time overall. You don't even have to spend your whole Sunday volunteering. The helping tasks in the study took only about 5 to 15 minutes. They included things like editing a student's essay or writing a note to a sick child. Time donators also felt like they could do more with their time, making them even more willing to give time in the future. Are we smarter than the dinosaurs? Specifically, are we clever enough to avoid their fate? If we don't want to be blown away by an asteroid, it would help to know what's out there. That's the idea behind the Sentinel mission. Sentinel is an infrared space telescope designed to spot near-Earth asteroids. But it won't be near Earth. It will launch in 2017 or 18 and adopt a Venus-like orbit around the Sun. From there it will search space for any asteroids that might come dangerously close to the Earth. It could double the known count of near-Earth asteroids in a matter of weeks. With enough warning, we'd have a chance to deflect an inbound asteroid. Sentinel is the brainchild of the B612 Foundation. B612 was the asteroid home of literature's Little Prince. The group announced their plans for Sentinel on June 28. But those plans depend on funding. The B612 Foundation is a nonprofit that aims to finance Sentinel through philanthropy. Former NASA astronaut Ed Lu heads the foundation. He says Sentinel needs a few $100 million to get off the ground. That's a lot of cash, but the B612 Foundation might make it. After all, when it comes to fundraising, humans leave the dinosaurs in the dust. Kids from the ages of 2 to 19 consume about 7 trillion calories in sugar-sweetened beverages per year, according to Steve Gortmaker of the Harvard School of Public Health. He spoke at the Obesity Society annual scientific meeting in San Antonio on September 23. 7 trillion is a lot of calories in sugar-sweetened beverages. At, for example, 50 cents per can, it's about $24 billion a year. All of those dollars and sugary calories are stoking the childhood obesity epidemic. Currently, in the U.S., about 17% of children and adolescents are obese. That's more than 12.5 million kids. And new research in the British Medical Journal suggests that obese children will have much higher risk factors for cardiovascular disease as adults. Even as kids, their hearts are changing shape to look like those of adults at risk for heart disease. But the good news is that simply cutting out an about of 64 calories a day from kids' diets could start to level out the steep rise in childhood obesity. That's equivalent to less than half a can of most non-diet sodas. Sweet potatoes contain fiber, vitamin A, and calcium. But the way that scientists think they can make them even more healthful is literally shocking. Researchers found that giving a jolt of electricity to sweet potatoes increased the level of antioxidants known as polyphenols by 60%. The investigators placed sweet potatoes in a solution of sodium chloride. They found that 0.2 amps of direct current gave the potatoes nearly 1.5 times more antioxidants than potatoes that weren't shocked. The research was presented at the National Meeting of the American Chemical Society. It seems that the electric zap stressed the potatoes into producing more polyphenols as a protective mechanism. And the treatment did not sacrifice flavor. Previous research has shown that electrically supercharging white potatoes increase antioxidant levels. So perhaps it's only a matter of time before other fruits and vegetables get shock therapy, too. Secret identities aren't just for superheroes anymore. Researchers have found that a protein present in everything from amoebas to people is living a double life. Once it binds to DNA, the protein, called RA, rips apart and then refolds into a different shape, to do a different job. RA is a transcription protein attached to or freed from a stretch of DNA. It determines if a gene is expressed or not. But once the protein has carried out its task, its helical structure unravels. Within seconds, it refolds into a barrel structure, which has a new role, this time in translation, where it helps the cell produce amino acids for new proteins. The study is in the journal Cell. The next step is to find out if the barrel can refold into the helix. After that, researchers want to see if proteins similar to RFA, which are present in all life on Earth, are capable of comparable molecular contortion. Which would mean a lot more bang for our protein buck. Some people turn their homes into pack rat middens. Such hoarding was thought to be a type of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. But in the most recent Diagnostic Manual of Psychological Disorders, hoarding is proposed to be a unique condition. It's now thought to be more about avoiding making decisions about possessions than a general obsession with them. In a recent study, scientists compared the brain activity of hoarders with that of those with OCD, while the subjects were deciding whether to keep or toss their own junk mail and the junk mail of others. Ownership did not affect the brain activity or choices of those with OCD. But the hoarders were different. Their decision-making brain circuit was quiet when contemplating others' mail, but became overactive for decisions about their own mail. Not surprisingly, hoarders kept significantly more of their own mail than the OCD group did. The study is in the Archives of General Psychiatry. Hoarders' self-ratings of indecisiveness correlated with the amount of activity in brain circuits related to exaggerated perception of the risk of a wrong decision. The researchers suggest that hoarding behavior has its own specific symptoms and should be treated differently than OCD. You might not know how many calories were in that sandwich. But if you got lunch at the Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria, you could tell with one glance whether you'd made a healthful choice. Offerings are color-coded. Simply posting calories does not always get consumers to make healthier choices. So researchers tried something different. Mass General's cafeteria food and beverage options were classified as least, somewhat, or most helpful with red, yellow, or green labels. Green is healthiest. Researchers then tracked some 4,600 employees. About 6 months after the changes were made, the purchases of red label food decreased by more than 15%, and red beverages dropped by 39%. Green food and drink purchases increased, according to the study in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. Making healthy food choices easier could, especially help the poor, the undereducated, the very populations most affected by the obesity epidemic. Mass General employees from these groups made the biggest improvements. It's not easy being yellow. Bananas now face two separate fungal epidemics, which threaten to pluck the fruit off of our tables. Fortunately, researchers have now sequenced banana DNA, producing the genome of a banana variety that may hold the secret to defeating the diseases. The report is in the journal Nature. Today, half of all bananas, including the ones you probably buy, belong to the Cavendish variety, whose popularity stems in part from having no seeds. But this trait also removes sexual reproduction from the equation. The bananas are thus all genetically identical and identically vulnerable to the two fungal epidemics, Panama disease and blackleaf streak disease. Researchers sequenced the genome of a banana variety called DH pahong, whose genes contributed to the Cavendish. While the genome shows where this fruit fits in the history of plant evolution, it could also help researchers understand why DH pahong, unlike its descendant, is resistant to the funguses behind both Panama and blackleaf streak disease. Knowing the genes responsible for this resistance could help breeders create stronger, more resistant bananas. Which has a lot of appeals. Just like corporations, stars, too, can engage in mergers and acquisitions. A new study has identified a pair of white dwarf stars heading toward a merger. White dwarfs are the hot, superdense remnants of spent stars. In a binary system called J0651, two white dwarfs circle each other very rapidly. The binary pairing completes an orbit in less than 13 minutes. And that already rapid orbital dance is speeding up as the two white dwarfs spiraling on each other. Each year their orbital period shrinks by 0.3 milliseconds. That's actually a pretty dramatic change on astronomical timescales. In about 1 million years, the white dwarfs will get so close that the larger one will start to cannibalize its smaller companion. Before long, the two stars will likely become one. The study appears in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. The tightly wound white dwarf binary should also be radiating gravitational waves ripples in the fabric of space and time. But today's gravitational wave detectors are not sensitive enough to detect them. That's okay, astronomers have another 1 million years, before things get really interesting, to build an instrument that's up to the task. Scientists are looking for Earth-like planets around other stars. But one way to limit the search can be to figure out where an Earth-like planet cannot exist and eliminate those types of systems. In a new study, astronomers turned their attention to so-called hot Jupiters. These are Jupiter-sized planets that have an orbit of only about 3 days. The scientists looked at 63 hot Jupiters to see if they could find evidence for any nearby Earth-like planets. They found none. But it could be that the companion planets are too small in size or mass or just aren't detectable with the current techniques. So the researchers then turned to hot Neptunes and warm Jupiters. These are Jupiters with slightly longer orbits. They found only 2 potential nearby planets among 222 hot Neptunes. And of the 31 warm Jupiters, 5 showed evidence of a companion. The findings are in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The current theory is that hot Jupiters formed and then migrated in towards their stars. The researchers say that the migration might have disrupted the formation of Earth-like planets. Good thing our Jupiter kept its cool. Does an ice-cold drink actually taste better than the same beverage at room temperature? Depends on what its taste is. A new study finds that the intensity of some flavors varies with temperature. The work is in the journal Chemosensory Perception. Researchers took solutions that tasted bitter, sour, sweet, or astringent, a flavor found in legumes and raw produce that creates a dry, puckering feel in the mouth. They either chilled the solutions to 5 degrees Celsius, the recommended temperature for keeping food cool, or heated the solutions to 35 degrees Celsius, a couple degrees below human body temperature. Volunteers then rated the tastes. Both sour and astringent solutions tasted stronger at warm temperatures, and the intensity lasted longer than it did with chilled drinks. Bitter flavors came through best when chilled. And temperature had no effect on perception of sweetness. For most people, temperature can enhance flavors. But for some, the thermal tasters, temperature alone can be a flavor. Heating or cooling parts of the tongue creates the sensation of taste without food, a finding that's hard to swallow. Americans still fall short of the recommended daily portions of fruits and vegetables. And kids are notoriously averse to veggies at the school cafeteria. So researchers tested whether visual cues of healthful foods could increase consumption at a grade school with 800 students. First, the scientists determined how many kids put carrots and green beans on their trays and how much they ate. 3 months later, they did the same analysis. But on the second day, the trays had pictures of carrots and green beans in the trays compartments. On the day with the photo cues, more than twice as many kids took green beans as on the control day, and more than 3 times as many kids took carrots. The average consumption per student went up as well. The study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. The researchers note that the effect needs to be tested elsewhere for longer than 2 days. And the amount of veggies eaten still did not meet government recommendations. But if pictures of burgers can sell meaty meals, maybe fresh fruit and veggie food photos can play a part in the campaign for healthier kids. Global warming might seem like a botanical boon. After all, milder temperatures and more carbon dioxide and nitrogen should feed flora. But a 10-year study has found that any initial positive effect on plant growth from climate change may soon disappear. The report is in the journal Nature Climate Change. Researchers transplanted vegetation from 4 grassland ecosystems to lower, warmer elevations. They also modified the precipitation at the transplant sites based on altered rainfall estimates. For the first year, the plants did great, producing more biomass and churning out more oxygen for us. But their productivity went down for the rest of the decade. What happened? Warming did speed up the nitrogen cycle, which should have increased nitrogen's availability as plant fertilizer. But a lot of the nitrogen left the soil through runoff or uptake into the atmosphere. In addition, productive native plants began to lose out to species that thrive at higher temperatures but are less productive than the natives. Warmer temperatures may spur immediate growth, but in the long term, we can't expect plants to like it hot. Every time you inhale, oxygen passes from your windpipe to your lungs and on into your bloodstream. But what if your windpipe was blocked? Getting the gas straight to your blood could save your life. Wait, put down that syringe. A large air bubble in a blood vessel can kill you. But what if the bubbles were only a few millionths of a meter in diameter? Researchers coated tiny amounts of oxygen gas with fatty molecules to create microparticles. Suspended in solution, the microparticles formed a foam containing 50 to 90% oxygen. In a beaker of blood, the foam was able to quickly transfer its oxygen to the cells. Then the researchers tested it in animals. Normally, a blocked windpipe cuts off the blood supply of oxygen, leading to brain damage and death. But when rabbits with blocked windpipes received injections of the microparticles, their blood oxygen levels and heart rates remained stable. The work is in the journal Science Translational Medicine. The foam may someday buy time for human patients, so that even someone with a closed airway can breathe easy. So a virus is something that you can't see by normal light microscopy. You need very advanced techniques for electron microscopy to see it, but that virus is not able to reproduce itself without a host, and us as human beings are made up of lots of different cell types, and we are interested in understanding at the molecular level how that virus infects the liver and why does it infect the liver and it doesn't infect the heart or it doesn't infect other tissues. For many years, the favorite horror story about abrupt climate change was that a shift in ocean currents could radically cool Europe's climate. These currents, called the overturning circulation, bring warm water and warm temperatures north from the equator to Europe. Susan Lozier, an oceanographer at Duke University, says scientists have long worried that this ocean circulation could be disrupted. The first step is to fill your primary fermenter with 22 liters of water and mark the level using a marker. Then, sanitize your fermenter along with a spoon thermometer and a hydrometer. Add 1.8 liters of warm water to the fermenter and stir in bentonite, which will aid you in clarifying the wine. Afterwards, pour the grape juice into the fermenter with the bentonite solution. Add 3.7 liters of warm water to the bag in order to get rid of any remaining juice and add it to the fermenter. To continue, top up the fermenter to the 22-liter mark with lukewarm water, stir energetically for 30 seconds, draw a sample of the juice, and take a hydrometer reading. For all his fame and celebration, William Shakespeare remains a mysterious figure with regards to personal history. There are just two primary sources for information on the bard: his works, and various legal and church documents that have survived from Elizabethan times. Naturally, there are many gaps in this body of information, which tells us little about Shakespeare the man. Lawrence Stephen Lowry RBSRA was an English artist. Many of his drawings and paintings depict Pendlebury, Lancashire, where he lived and worked for more than 40 years, and also Salford and its surrounding areas. Lowry is famous for painting scenes of life in the industrial districts of northwest England in the mid-20th century. He developed a distinctive style of painting and is best known for his urban landscapes peopled with human figures often referred to as matchstick man. He painted mysterious unpopulated landscapes, brooding portraits, and the unpublished marionette works, which were only found after his death. So the phone company designed phones for use globally with this added feature. Ethnographic research has also been carried out in computer companies. In one company, IT systems administrators were observed for several weeks. It was found that a large amount of their work involved communicating with colleagues in order to solve problems, but that they didn't have a standard way of exchanging information from spreadsheets, and so on. So the team came up with an idea for software that would help them to do this. That brings us to the CEO's second duty, building everyone, or more accurately, building the senior team. All the executives report to the CEO, so it's the CEO's job to hire, fire, and manage the executive team. From coaching CEOs, I actually think this is the most important skill of all. Because when a CEO hires an excellent senior team, that team can keep the company running. When a CEO hires a poor senior team, the CEO is up to spending all of their time trying to do with the team, and not nearly enough time trying to do with other elements of their job. The senior team can and often does develop the strategy for the company, but ultimately it's always the CEO who has the final go-no-go decision on strategy. A majority of U.S. high school students say they get bored in class every day, and more than 1 out of 5 has considered dropping out, according to a survey released on Wednesday. The survey of 81,000 students in 26 states found 2/3 of high school students complain of boredom, usually because the subject matter was irrelevant or their teachers didn't seem to care about them. The other teams try to collaborate on building the structure and descended into confusion, with everyone getting in each other's way. Our team leader solved the challenge brilliantly. She simply asked everyone in the team to move a piece a few centimeters, to comply with the rule, and then let the person in the team with an aptitude for puzzles like this build it alone.